Yeah, great question. So in March, nominations will officially open for anyone interested to run to be the next VP Finance, VP Admin, or VP Education. So typically, the process consists of doing consultations with relevant stakeholders, and then also speaking with the people currently in the role. So that would be me, Jess, and Graham. And then it's also a great idea to reach out to the student representative assembly, so the elected student leaders from each faculty, and then also, talk to students to see what they want your priorities to be for the upcoming year. And then after you kind of go through that process, and then after you nominate yourself, you just have to make a platform and then prepare yourself for an election that occurs at the SRA, or the Student Representative Assembly level.
Sure. So I have a pretty difficult time summarizing the breadth of my portfolio, but I'll give it a shot. So as Vice President Administration, you'd be responsible for managing some of the services that the MSU provides, from peer support to student life, including Spark in the latter, and then more towards the peer support angle, Student Health Education Center, Pride Community Center, and various others. So that's one part of it. There's also the administrative and internal governance side, so dealing with policies and regulations for the organization, some employment matters, but not so much. And then there's also a huge Welcome Week component, as people generally find is the most interesting aspect, at least heading into August and September. But there are various other things that this role does, and it would probably take me hours and hours to really get into detail. So yeah, you could just send me an email or something if you really want to learn a lot more about it. Otherwise, I don't think I'd really do it justice. So I think I'll pass it off to others to probably give maybe a better, clearer picture of what they do. So I'll hand the mic over.
For sure. Yeah, I can definitely go to outline a bit of the Vice President of Finance portfolio. So as all of us are, you would be a member of the Board of Directors, which are the leading members that oversee everything within the MSU. Specifically with the Vice President of Finance, you oversee all the departmental budgets, which is about $13.5 million. Definitely can be daunting at times, but it really is just prioritizing the strategic financial stability and financial viability of the organization moving forward. A lot of it is training others on finance just to understand like their budgets and how to budget track throughout the year effectively to ensure that they're staying within their margins. But other than that, a lot of fun stuff involving our business units on campus, including 1280, the Grind, Union Market, and the Underground. But yeah, it definitely is difficult to encompass into a short paragraph, and also always welcome to answer more questions over email.
Yeah, so for me, my job as the Vice President of Education is really to lead advocacy efforts for students. And I know advocacy can seem like a complicated or like an unclear concept, but it's really simple. It really just means listening to students and representing students. And so for me, my main job as the Vice President of Education is to really look out for the educational experience of students, but that really encompasses, education can mean a lot of things. It can mean not just students in the classroom, but it means outside the classroom, their on campus and off campus experience, mental health, whether they're able to afford post secondary education. So all these things are, as students know, all these things really matter to students' education, and those are the things that I work on every day. And in terms of the actual day-to-day of my job, a lot of it is spent working with the Education and Advocacy Department. So this is a team of students, of part-time students and volunteers who I work with to advance the concerns of students to the university, but also to the external government, so at the municipal level and then the provincial and federal level. So really, I think, at the core of this job, it's about first listening to students, finding out what their concerns are, and then relaying those concerns and really amplifying the voices of students, which is what the MSU is really all about. Yeah, I think really I became interested in student politics when I was working with the Silhouette in second year, which is our campus newspaper. And then last year, I was the Associate Vice President of Municipal Affairs for the MSU. So in that job, my portfolio was working on city issues and representing students to city councilors and local stakeholders. And through that experience, I also worked very closely with the VP Education last year, who is Shamar, and through that interaction, I learned a lot about the different aspects of the VP Education role. So I think I think the first qualification is for you to really be interested in how to make things better for students. If you have a passion for helping others and I think just the whole university experience, then this is a really good job for you. I think it helps to have a lot of knowledge of sort of how the university and the MSU works, and also have a strong passion for politics and how the government works, because we do a lot of interacting with the government. But essentially, I think these roles, nobody comes in fully prepared. There's a lot to learn. But it is also very rewarding. So I would encourage anyone to apply if you're interested, or to reach out with more information. And maybe the last thing I'll add is that, before coming to this role, I, like Jess and Graham probably did, reached out to the people that were previously in this role, and then a lot of people that worked alongside. So there's a lot to learn just through talking to people that have worked in the position before.
Awesome. Ryan did a really good job of summarizing that up, I would definitely say. But the main point that I would really want to outreach to students about is just that every student has a valuable experience and assets that they can bring to any of these roles that could truly help shape how they approach the role, how they approach problems within the MSU, how they advocate for students and enhance the student life. So never count yourself out just because you don't have direct MSU service experience or direct AVP experience. Everyone within if you've ever been involved in your faculty, a residence life, have outside job experience that you've just dealt with issues or problems and really helped advocate on behalf of other folks before, I definitely think can be proven to be valuable assets within any of our roles. I, similarly to Ryan, was previously an AVP, and I also was on the Student Representative Assembly the year before that as well. But outside of that, I also had experience within the university, so I had a bit of that knowledge behind me. Also did a few more fun things in regards to was involved in my faculty, was an ROR with residence life for 2 years. So I do think that you can make the most of this role, honestly, as long as you're coming in willing to learn and willing to just hear out students with everything you do. I definitely think that a lot of the kind of hierarchical organizational aspects can be learned throughout the role.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot much to add to that. I think just to capitalize on something that Ryan mentioned, you don't have to be fully prepared to come into the role, and I think that expectation is sort of just a pretty good motto throughout the position, as you will likely as most people who have gone through these roles have not really mastered them by the end of their terms anyways. It's really about what Jess mentioned, about being willing and interested in learning about how to advance the student experience. And not only is the VP Ed going to be the main point of advocating for students, of course that is a huge component of the process. In external relations, I think all of these positions have a huge role in really just requiring some sort of some drive and passion towards advancing the student experience overall, and really showcasing that your experience is going to bring a different light to the roles in one way or another. I'd say that Jess made a good point that you don't have to be an AVP to be a VP. And I think that that's sort of a standard that's come up over the past few years. It's sort of a pattern as well. I was the Associate Vice President Internal Governance last year. And of course, I bring a lot of that policy and governance angle to the position this year. Past two VP admins have been AVP services, and before that, commissioners, which is a whole different historical thing. But I think that that's, I guess, to answer the question more clearly, I use the knowledge that I got from my undergrad in psychology, in my experiences with the marching band and with clubs, all the time, in just different transferable ways. And I think that that's really the important thing, is just learning to transfer skills and experiences within not only your experience with the MSU, but with the community or whoever you lead with, or have joyful and positive experiences with, to really highlight that this role and these roles in general are not going to be the most positive experiences every time, but it's important to remember the good things that you're doing and the things that, and being able to really bring it back to why you are interested in the role in the first place. And being able to have that positive drive throughout the process is going to be really critical. And I'd say that's a really important experience to making these roles really come to life.
Yeah, but maybe if I could add, I think like Graham touched on a really important thing, which is that like everyone brings a different angle to the role, and like for me, even like it was my AVP experience helped me a lot, but also like I have a bit of a background in like research, and I've been a part of a few sports teams, and I find like that experience that like is unique to me has like really helped me like in my day to day on the role. And I think, like I said, everyone is different. But everyone has different strengths that they bring to the role and help them do it well every day.
Can I also add one other thing? Just essentially the fact that I know with all these roles, it's kind of like the title encompasses one set thing. Specifically with VP Finance, I know that can be super daunting to folks that aren't within business or have a finance background. But I would also assure folks that the past 4 or so VP Finances have not come from a finance background. We all have come from a background more of understanding people and managing people, which I do think is also a large component of our role. Is just we oversee 40 plus full-time staff, over 200 part-time staff indirectly. So a lot of it is just like working with people and understanding their concerns and hearing them and making sure that they feel validated as well. A lot of the nitty-gritty details you can learn and pick up on the job. So just don't let that be something that scares folks away as well.
I think the fact that we are not just our siloed positions is a great, build off of that. Like, there are so many board responsibilities, and being able to work with one another and thick and thin, and whether or not we agree or not, is a really, really valuable thing to bring to the table. And just that listening here, as Jess was mentioning, and being able to work with people. Sure. So, where do I start? So I have 2 AVPs who are great. They run their own committees. They're part of the SRA in a way. So that's the Avp Internal Governance, which I was in that role last year, relating more to the policy side of things and just making sure our procedures are up to date, are equitable, are manageable, that sort of thing. Then there's AVP Services, dealing with service creation and review, services being different from clubs. And if you're interested more in that, feel free to check out the website as we can go into more detail there. And then there's all of the part-time managers for services, ranging from peer support to food insecurity to first-year transition experience, that sort of thing. I think there's about, I can't even remember right now, it's like 10 to 12 or something along those lines. So that obviously takes up a huge portion of just my considerations and my thoughts going into a lot of board conversations. And then there's also the admin team research assistant who helps work on side projects to do with admin, whether it's hiring, working to develop some of our sexual violence response protocols, accessibility standards, community needs assessments, those sorts of things, more in that ad hoc basis. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's It's a lot, but it's fun.
Yeah, so for me, as I mentioned earlier, so I oversee the Education and Advocacy Department, which is a team of part-time students. So we have 3 associate vice presidents who work part-time. So we have the associate vice president, municipal affairs, associate vice president, university affairs, and then the last one for provincial and federal affairs. So I work closely with them to work on different initiatives and projects throughout the year. We also have an advocacy coordinator who works on the different campaigns that come up through the year. And then finally, we have students in research positions who help us develop policies and strengthen our research by making sure that everything we do is evidence driven and factual. And then I think for my position, I also work pretty closely with the communications team. There's a lot of different projects and campaigns throughout the year that I work with that department to promote and get out to students. A lot of times we're engaging students to sign petitions or share their stories. So we work closely with the comms team to do that. And then in terms of day-to-day, I work with a lot of different people. I work pretty closely with the president to oftentimes meet with university administrators and faculty representatives to relay student concerns. But also a really cool part of my job is I get to meet with a lot of government representatives. So on a weekly and monthly basis, I'm often meeting with city councilors and then local MPPs and MPs. I also get the chance to participate in provincial and federal lobby weeks with our student union partners, where we meet with a lot of different politicians, which is a really exciting and rewarding part of the job.
Awesome. For myself, within the finance kind of section of the board, the main individual that I oversee is the Associate Vice President of Finance, which is a part-time role. This individual oversees the finance committee that has SRA representatives on it, MSU representatives on it, etc. They also chair the sponsorship and donations committee, which is another great avenue for groups on campus, clubs, individuals to apply for sponsorship or donation available to them. From there, day to day, I definitely work very closely with our finance department. So that includes our accounts payable, accounts receivable, director of finance, our accounting clerk, as well as now our new clubs accounting clerk. 2 of which are internship opportunities, and then the other 3 are full-time employees within the MSU. This just generally ends up working out as I have to sign obviously all of the checks because I am the main signing authority within the MSU. But from there, I also have more of a supervisory function over the departmental budget specifically. So I also work closely with all of our department heads and also our part-time managers just in regards to their budgets. So any type of like purchase order questions, budget tracking questions, anything like that. I speak with them quite regularly just to help answer those type of questions. But other than that, I definitely would also say I work quite closely with the president and also the club's administrator, especially this year with moving all the club's accounts internally. We've just been working through any type of issues or concerns that come up from clubs of how to access their funding and money more easily and making it readily available to them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I definitely missed. I only talked on the part-time side of things. I work very closely with the admin team too, as you might imagine, and HR. I'm not gonna go into details there because I'm sure you could look into it, or you already know some of those staff members. Just like if you follow any of the live streams, looking at Victoria, Scott, and Daniela, who for the life of me I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not going to butcher it here. So yeah, working with them on some of the policy changes and that sorts of things. Health and dental plan, less so, but yeah, a lot of HR conflicts and that sort of thing, as well as dealing with some of the network side of things too, and my close relationships with Pauline on the project side of things. and very heavily with campus events, but mostly to do with the welcoming experience. So that's an excellent question. I think that there's probably a lot of confusion or I guess misinformation about some of the elections expectations. So I can go a little bit into that. So the main difference between the MSU presidential election and the VP ones are that the VP elections are actually run through the Student Representative Assembly. So they sort of vote vicariously for the student body in that sense. As representatives, they tend to do. So in that vein, there isn't necessarily much of a campaign procedure, although folks tend to develop platforms through some degree of consultation with the student body, with members of the Student Representative Assembly, and what sort of visions and year plans and ideas they had going into their positions, as well as in discussions with and consultations, as was already mentioned, with the folks who are currently in the roles. And those platforms generally go into some sort of booklet. It's not really a high standard for or mandate for how complicated or aesthetic it needs to be, but generally that's just what we've seen so far. And going into the election, you just talk about your ideas. Folks will ask you questions on the election day, and you really just get to share your thoughts and your essentially your vision or your the experiences that you've sort of learned a lot from either internally or from all of your conversations with various representatives or just general members. And then on the day of the election, you do that campaigning to the voting members of the SRA, and then it's either yes or no.
So I'd say really the main difference between the presidential election and the vice president election is that the presidential election takes place with the student body at large, so everyone votes on the president, while the vice presidents are elected through the SRA or the Student Representative Assembly, and the SRA is 31 undergraduate students who are proportionally represented from every faculty and voted in by the students in each faculty. So the SRA is the one that ultimately elects the 3 vice presidents.
Just to add to that, the SRA is consistent of the current board of directors as well, just to have that extra 4 voices at the table.
So all the vice president roles are full-time positions. They're year-long contracts. And according to the bylaws, vice presidents can take 1 course along with while they're doing the job. So it's really up to the vice president whether they choose to do so.
And is that 1 course over the course of their employment or per term?
It's 1 course per semester.
For sure. So obviously within these roles, they all encompass a lot of different aspects of the MSU. I would say every single day is different, and you are constantly learning new things within the role. And throughout the role, the main thing that it's really taught me is just like really sticking to my why. Like, why am I doing things? Why do I want to continue to voice the concerns of students and advocate on behalf of them? Why am I trying to enhance the student life? What are my goals from that? And I think having a really strong why when you're running for these positions really does help propel you through the role and continue yourself forward whenever you're faced with any type of adversity. Obviously, there can be challenges that come from any type of role, any type of employment. I think everyone has experienced challenges in their life. But I do just think that as long as you are confident in your why and able to kind of fall back on that, it really does teach you a lot, and it opens you up to being more willing to listen to other people's concerns, hear their perspectives, but also stay strong to your morals or your beliefs. Never just trust your gut, I would say, throughout this role, and that's kind of what it's really taught me.
I think there are probably two things that are really my favorite parts of the job. I think one is to be able to work with a team of students. like my portfolio, I think, is very broad, and I can't manage everything. And it's really rewarding to me to be able to empower other people to pursue, their passions for how they want to speak up for students and enhance student life, and just be able to see how far some of the team members have gone in really pursuing their projects and being able to support them, I think has been really rewarding. And I think the other part is being able to represent students directly to like government representatives. I think it's also a huge responsibility, and it's really important that we do that accurately. But I think it really does make a difference, when we are able to listen to students and then relay those concerns to people in power, because that's really how you can make a lot of, I'd say, systemic change that enhances the lives of students.
I would say probably my favorite part of this position is it's something to do with that phrase about planting seeds for trees under which you won't ever experience the shade. I think that there's some sort of reward or it's sort of this unknowing reward that you may never experience of working on longer term goals that you may never see come to fruition. And maybe that's what that delayed gratification is sort of what being a student is supposed to be about. And I feel like these positions really encapsulate that in one way or another. I think the idea that coming into this role, there are a lot of goals that I might have, but the importance of those goals and visions that came before me and will come after are not only just as valid, but maybe even more important in the long run. So I'd say maybe that idea and sentiment of carrying forward the torch for those who will have very different ideals. There's so much that's changed in the last 4 years, and 5 years, and however long folks' degrees and experiences at Mac are. And they will continue to change, and being a part of that is a truly rewarding experience.
I'll also add, I think, sorry, Jess, I think something that's like really great about our roles as well is that you really, each day is different. I think for my role, I never really, I have a plan, for the week, for the month, but things always come up, and it's really, I think, exciting. At least I'm never bored in the role because I come in and you never really know what issue will come up in the university or, in the government. So that's a really exciting part of the job for me.
For sure. And I was also just going to go off of Ryan's point of this empowering others idea of just the staff that we work with every single day, from full-time to part-time staff, are so passionate about their services and their departments that it's truly so inspiring just to see the amount of dedication that they have to their jobs and to really wanting to enhance the student experience. I honestly love to see just their eyes light up, even via Zoom or via Teams. They all work every single day to really enhance the student experience, and that also, I feel like, just adds to the day.
I'd say that the working from home atmosphere is definitely one it's difficult to navigate, especially at first. But I think that one of the really unique features of the incoming vice presidents is that, unlike ever before, they're going to be navigating the return to campus, the excitement and interest of students going into an environment, and, well, I guess employees as well, coming back into that whole new setting, where maybe we can recognize some things, but there will be a couple rounds of students who are just learning that as a new, fresh start. And getting to really experience that transition is something that I'm excited about, even though I'm never going to see it. So the working from home atmosphere is probably similar to the experiences that students are facing in some respects. But the interesting landscape in which folks particularly within these positions, will experience next year is one that I am very thrilled to see.
For sure. And I was just going to say, going off of Graham's point as well, I would say my main piece of advice with working from home is definitely this idea of creating a routine. It can definitely be challenging at first, I would say, especially in like the winter months of getting up and starting work at 9 a.m., ready to go, ready to get on those Teams meetings. But with that being said, once you get used to the role and get into this kind of routine, it does definitely get easier. And I think a large priority of our board this past year for both ourselves, our full-time staff, and our part-time staff is really ensuring that folks are practicing self-care and taking that time that they need to get up and stretch your legs every hour. We really don't want folks staying in front of their screen for hours on end. We definitely know and are aware of burnout, and just Zoom fatigue is definitely a pressing issue this year, and it'll probably continue into next year as well. So with that being said, just taking the time that you need for yourself and like definitely prioritizing your own self-care, I would definitely say is a priority for anyone within this environment.
I'd say there's been a growing mentality of understanding, especially this year, for the new environment. And I think there have been whole new procedures developed and restructures of some of the ways that we support staff, particularly within this environment. So I think there are lots of opportunities to provide not just that mentality of, okay, well, we're going through some difficult times and we all need to take care of ourselves, but also the support to go along with that. So.
Yeah. And then you also are not going through it alone, I think is just the other last point. You do have the rest of your board there with you, all the full-time staff, the part-time staff. Everyone's there cheering you on and really encouraging you to do the best that you can within these roles. So just never, obviously take the time that you need for yourself, but never feeling isolated. We really prioritize keeping in contact with one another, even if it's just jumping on a Teams call just to vent because you had a difficult day. I definitely think that that's important to not necessarily bottle everything up, but know that you do have resources and support available to you.